agenda. This is something that's new for us, so if anything needs to be pulled out for discussion, now is the time to say that.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move approval of this evening's consent agenda as presented.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to our elected officials' remarks. County Commissioner Zach.
Good evening, everybody. I hope people saw the announcement about the potential of having public transit. I think we're going to make it happen this time, so I'm very excited. We will have, for those of you that haven't read about it, there is legislation that will called the, I think, Municipal Partnership or Public Municipal Act that was introduced in Lansing in 2011. And it needs to be modified a little bit so to allow us to create a separate taxing authority for transit. And this would be for Washtenaw, Oakland, and Wayne. Macomb has decided not to be part of this group at this point. They feel that their transportation needs are being met by SMART at this point. They have a county-wide SMART system, unlike Wayne and Oakland, that allows opt-out. And they are more interested in doing their jail millage, and they don't feel that they can successfully support two millage asks. So in any case, the three counties, along with the city of Detroit, are going to come together. There is political bipartisan support to introduce the legislation in Lansing in December and get it done. In the meantime, we have a lot of work to do, and for the first time in my tenure, we're going to invest in some proper resources from Oakland County standpoint, that we can have our own transportation expert help us develop what we need in our county, you know, polling, messaging. I had the opportunity to meet with a messaging group along with other elected officials. I think we're going to engage this organization. They worked on the Los Angeles Transit Plan, and that's just from the Oakland County perspective. There's going to be resources coming from the other counties, as well as the business community is very engaged and excited about making things happen. The goal is to, and we want to engage stakeholders, citizens, you know, get lots of feedback from people, communicate better than it has been done in the past, but it's a very fast time frame. Goal is to try and have a plan together by March, which is quite aggressive, you know, April, and have a ballot initiative ask by November 2020 on that ballot. So more will be coming out on that. I do want to remind people about flu vaccinations. I know we've offered them here, but they are available at our health department, which is on Greenfield Road in Catalpa. We all, you know, there's other vaccinations there. There have been some cases of animal rabies reported in Oakland County, so be cognizant. And if you do suspect something, please notify the Oakland County Health Department, and that can be found at www.oakgov.com/health. Want to remind people that we have a whole continuum of business services, and we did put more money into our microloan program, and this is like the first stage of funding for small businesses. We do have education, you know, that we will work with you on developing a plan, and this can be the first funding is through our microloan program. It's been very successful, and we have offered additional funding there. On April 23rd, the Board of Commissioners approved a new contract procurement policy that requires board approval for professional service contracts over $250,000. This is new. I've never had the opportunity to vote on contracts like this before. More transparency, better government with checks and balances. And this was a big deal to make it happen. So I'm very pleased to say that there's a lot of good things coming on. Finally, the Oakland Community Health Network Board, formerly called the Community Mental Health Authority, renamed, there are 5 board positions coming up. So a lot of different positions, 2 for secondary consumers, 2 for general public, 1 for a mental health professional. And I really do encourage people to apply, have an opportunity to get a broader range of people on these boards. And there's a lot of change in the mental health area. We are doing another search for a new leader, a CEO. And the second in command is retiring. So there's a lot of change. I think it's positive. I was actually asked to join an internal work group on mental health by one of our new deputy county execs. So I do encourage residents to apply. To apply, you go to the OakGov website /BOC and go into committees, and there's an application there. And if you need any assistance finding it or you can't access, let me know and I will help you with that. But I really do want to reshape some of these boards. Boards can get complacent. This is an opportunity to have some different eyes look at operations. So that's it for tonight. Any questions for me? Yes.
With the new county executive, will there be a stronger focus on seniors and the senior advisory committee?
There's no question that our county exec and his team really value health initiatives, and it falls under that. Looking at how to strengthen that, there's no question that that is a value. I've been getting unsolicited texts, feedback from judges and others talking about how appreciative they are about our human resources initiative, compensation study, the communication is more efficient, open. It's been really, when I've heard from, I think, 3 or 4 judges, texting me or calling me saying, boy, this is really positive. It's nice to hear that. So it is an opportunity, but there's a lot of work to be done.
It was a good committee, but once you did something, it never went anywhere because the county executive didn't care and very often, even annually, would not show up.
I am confident that it is valued, and if you saw the list of achievements in 3 months, and I'm very hopeful and excited. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Public participation now is an opportunity for the public to address the commission for an item that is not on the agenda. Please come forward to the microphone.
Thank you. My name is Matthew Lee. I'm with 10145 Elgin Avenue is where I reside, where I've resided there for about 10 years, since 2009, the winter of 2009. And I'm coming in here with a concern over a property. The address is 10425 Elgin Avenue, which is approximately at the intersection of Meadowcrest and Elgin. With me, I have a couple of people I'd like to introduce, if they could introduce themselves and their address.
I am Joan Lee, and this is my husband, Mel Lee, and we both live at 10415 Elgin. And I'm Jane Fairfield, and I live at 10404 Elgin.
Elgin? No? Would you like to move there? No?
It's a great street.
We're welcome to have you.
It's a great street.
All right. Thank you for that. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to all of you here today. I come very respectfully about the house in question, 10425 Elgin, as an eyesore in its overall condition of the house. And I do aware, I'm not presenting this as a upset resident, because I realize that a lot of you probably are not aware of this house, but let me please update you on the condition of the house. It's an eyesore. Its overall condition has been abandoned for 16 years, since the year 2003. It is rat infested, and personally, I've seen rats go in and out of the house through the milk chute. And there's also another hole in the house, which one of the neighbors has pointed out that varmint is going in and out of the house. And we did report that to Hank in the city earlier this summer, approximately the April timeframe. I guess you could say that was spring. There is also, I guess you have the leaning garage of Elgin, maybe a tourist attraction someday, but it is miraculously standing up there still, and it probably won't stand for very much longer. It is leaning to the east and will eventually come off its foundation. There's an old car in there, approximately mid-90s, General Motors vehicle, full of, I'm sure, gas, oil, battery acid, and a whole bunch of other cornucopia of hazardous materials. It has not moved since for 16 years, which should also create a little bit of concern for the neighborhood as well. You know, overall, Elgin is a beautiful neighborhood representing a beautiful, you know, part of the Bronx neighborhood, part of Huntington Woods. We're all proud to live here. A lot of the people, I encourage my parents who are sitting back here to move to Huntington Woods to be close to me so I could take care of them in their senior years, and for better or worse. We're still determining whether it's better. And I love you, Mom. But they are paying $8,000 a year in taxes, close to $8,000 a year in taxes. I pay $4,000. I think in this little corner over here, you have about $20,000 in taxes coming in. And I think it's time that, you know, since 2003, the house has been abandoned. And if some action, some corrective action.
Is this a house where the owners live out of state?
They do, and I don't intend to give a whole recollection because I can't confirm or deny anything.
This has been
but
brought to the city's attention before, because I know I spoke to Hank Berry about this, I think, last summer.
Hank's very familiar with the property, and I guess, and I'll give you my general understanding of the situation, is that the owner resides out of state in the deep Midwest, and there was an unfortunate situation where one of the family members passed away, and the house was left in 2003, approximately 2003, and that since then there hasn't been any attention provided to the house, and the garage door is falling off. You know, the environment will take over the property eventually, and that's what's happening right now. And it's unfortunate because there's a lot of nice properties around the house in question, and I think it brings down property value as well as confidence.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Amy, do you have any background as to why? I mean, is this like house tied up in some legal situation, or why has it been abandoned for 16 years?
It was left to the homeowner's son when she passed away. He lives in Great Falls, Montana, and is unwilling to do anything to the house, and has been uncooperative, even with the courts. We do maintenance as best as we can in terms of cutting the grass and getting the yard cleaned up. We do have the structural report that the garage is unsound, and we're taking a look at next steps because we would need to notify the owner so that he would have the right to object to the demolition of the garage, but being as he's unresponsive in Great Falls, Montana, and also need to decide what to do with the contents of the garage if in fact we were to demolish it. So it's not a simple, clean solution where you just haul somebody into court and.
No, they don't want to come.
Right.
You also have the rat infestation, which is
No more sympathetic.
yeah. Oh, and I understand. I'm just reminding.
This is a public health concern.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
it's more than, hey,
Carol,
Yeah, Carol, can you tell us
this,
about,
I just found out about this recently, okay?
Isn't this a
do we have a blight
condemnation
policy?
situation?
Well, but you have a dangerous building ordinance, which I looked at a little bit before coming to the meeting. Quite frankly, I'd like to see us make some amendments to it, okay, to have a different process that I think would streamline it. But there, even by law, there are certain conditions which will qualify a structure as being dangerous and others that don't, okay? It's not enough that it just doesn't look good or it needs to be painted or things like that. That doesn't qualify. So the first thing I want to do is look at the ordinance, gather some more facts on the history from Hank. I think I want to do some quick amendments to the ordinance. And if we can come up with sufficient evidence that can be documented to show, for example, I mean, the house itself is not technically dangerous. It's a brick house. It may look to be in disrepair because it needs to be painted and things like that, but it's not
going to be considered, you know, a dangerous building by law. The garage is another story, okay? So I think we probably can take some action with respect to the garage. It's very complicated because the residents are out of state. They've been totally uncooperative. So we may have to do something in terms of substituted service, and I guess what I would recommend is even if we go through a dangerous building proceeding, which would be at this local level, that we would ourselves take it to court to get a court order to confirm, you know, even if they fail to appeal to the court, which is ultimately their responsibility, I think I would take it to court, just, we would do it ourselves.
I would favor immediate,
Yeah,
because the situation they're talking about, as Joe says, is a public health hazard. It is a situation that would likely qualify for injunctive relief. And if we can't, if you've got a because I told you, Hank brought this, at least to my attention last summer, and if you have a non-responsive homeowner, it's not fair, like you say, to everybody that lives around the house to have to endure this. So, you know, we have some levers at our disposal, and one of them is to file a civil action against them and obtain court order to, for example, start with tearing the garage down, ordering whatever rodent prevention matters have to be put in, exterminators or whatever, and to seal the house up, and then we ultimately end up getting a judgment against the owner. Do they pay taxes?
yes,
They
just
wait to the-
before they're
right.
foreclosed.
They're always
Oh.
3 years in arrears.
See, you know, when you're dealing with, these are not people that are likely going to be honored on the 4th of July by the city of Huntington Woods.
Yeah.
I would hope not.
So, and, you know, just so you understand, probably the slowest way for us to do it would be for the city to file a lawsuit based upon it being a public nuisance, okay? The quickest way to accomplish it would be if we can structure it as a dangerous building hearing, because that's conducted here at the local level, and then it
By
goes to
us?
court. Yes, it's conducted by us, and then.
Why don't we have the hearing tonight? I'm all
Well, but
set.
technically then, under the law, they're supposed to appeal if they disagree with the dangerous building hearing officer's determination. But
Who's the
like,
hearing officer, Hank
well,
Berry?
no, here's the thing, this is where your ordinance is set up a bit strangely. You don't have a hearing ordinance, you have it going to your property maintenance board or something, which is not probably the best way. So what I'm saying is, you know, I'm just sort of getting into this, I want to look at the best way to do it, because what we don't want to do is jump in and do it and not get relief from the court, and then you're really going to be stuck. So
I
it may take a
understand.
little bit of time, but we'd rather set it up and do it right to get the best, you know, end conclusion we can.
I appreciate your advice, and to remind the commission is that the structure has been compromised in 2 locations. So the structure is, while it is brick, it is compromised to the outside elements and creatures, as well as the flood of 2014. I don't know that it was ever addressed in the house, because this house has been abandoned since 2003. So you could be dealing with a mold situation that is, my guess, pretty significant at this point. So that even exasperates the situation.
That may make it totally uninhabitable.
Well, and that's,
Right.
we have to take it one step at a time,
I appreciate that.
so,
Well, like I
because
said,
we'll
I
have to get an
favor,
administrative warrant to
I
get in
don't
there.
think we need to, well, we can talk about this,
Yeah.
but I believe that we have a basis for injunctive relief in circuit court. And I mean, you're talking about, if you file a lawsuit, the person has 28 days to respond. And I think just about anything we do is going to take some degree of time. So it may be prudent to do both. Why not? What do
Are
we
you gonna,
lose?
but you gotta serve them too.
You're going to end up having to do substituted service on him. This guy isn't going to come to the door
No.
because the sheriff in Bozeman's out there on his horse with a complaint and summons for him. Trust me.
There's some other things that I found out today that we probably need to talk about
Well,
before
we
any of
plan
those
on,
decisions are
you
made.
can count on one thing. We're going to address this promptly
Yeah,
and forcefully.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, could we add a closed session then to our next agenda to discuss pending litigation on this topic so we can discuss it in more detail? Or when
Well-
do you feel like we could start the ball
I'm
rolling?
gonna have to look into it, and like I said, it may be that I recommend first that we make some changes to the ordinance so that we can act quickly through the ordinance procedure. It would not be a lawsuit by that point. So let's see how it goes. I can always do an attorney-client privilege communication and discuss it in closed session, and we can do that, so.
We're not, this isn't gonna be, growing moss, no pun intended here.
Understood.
And to expedite, if we need to take action on amending the ordinance, could there be a special meeting held for that? Or does it have
Sure,
to
and
be?
the other thing, remember, your charter only requires one reading. We passed a thing to make a voluntary two reading, which we don't have to do. So this is something we could adopt in one meeting.
Okay.
All right, so we can streamline it that way as well.
If I could only make one more request, is that maybe the neighbors around this house be updated as to the progress of this taking place. I'm sure that all of them would significantly appreciate that communication.
Is there a way that we can seal the house at this point in time, so at least we stop the rodents
Well-
as a
Not without a
nuisance?
court
No,
order.
we can't do it without a court order, and we did send the police out when there was a complaint, because they can enter the property and look through the windows and put their hands in the milk chute and everything else. They found no evidence of any animals in the structure at that time.
When was that?
I don't have the exact date. So, that's part of the problem. I mean, typically when you're basing a dangerous building on the existence of animals, you have a situation where the windows are out, the door's out, and you go in there and there's literally all kinds of animal nests and animals living there. The fact that you might see a rat go in and out, probably in and of itself is not sufficient to deem that structure dangerous. So you're better off looking at other things about the structure versus the existence of rats in the yard.
I did have a neighbor who was ticketed for rats in the garage. I happened to inherit her squirrels in my attic and stuff like that. The city, she did follow through in dealing with that. Now, it wasn't the whole house, it wasn't a condemnation, but she just had crap throughout her garage that had been stored there for years.
Well, Hank can give you more information
You
on
understand this
but
guy doesn't respond, he's been
No,
ticketed.
and you have to know
There's
this
been
too.
multiple
Hank has
tickets.
issued tickets. He failed to appear in court. The court ordered him to show cause, or they would have him arrested. Next thing the court knew, they were getting a letter from a Montana attorney, basically saying, you don't have jurisdiction over my client. Court withdraws the order for him to show cause. So there's a lot of complicated issues here by virtue of him being out of state. That the court, it becomes more tricky in the court, probably not as tricky if we do an administrative dangerous building hearing. So give me some time to look into it, okay? We'll look at the various avenues and figure it out. If you want, we can plan on a closed session at the next commission meeting to discuss some alternatives.
Well, we appreciate your.
I appreciate-
And we're gonna deal with
Yep.
this problem.
I appreciate all of your attention. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other public comment? Thank you. Seeing none other public participation is closed. And moving on to the first item of business, matter of considering the ballot proposal for the establishment of a firefighters and police officer pension and retirement system.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that the City of Huntington Woods adopt the resolution to submit to the electors a ballot proposal for the establishment of a firefighters and police officers pension and retirement system at the May 10th, 2020 presidential primary election.
Second.
Want to add anything?
Well, I do have Jeff Aronoff from Miller Canfield, in case there's any questions, also happens to be a resident.
I knew I recognized you.
And the language is written so that the Public Act 345 millage is limited to 25 years in duration, and that no more than 3 mills would be levied. Of course, the amount to be levied would be dependent on the required contribution for the pension. So that'll vary year to year, but it would never be more than 3 mills. And we need to get this done today so that it can be submitted to the county in December to be placed on the March 10th ballot.
Is there any public comment?
Claire Galed. You all know where I live. Having sat in on a lot of the Finance Committee meetings and hearing the discussion on setting the millage, the recommendation of that committee was to go higher than 3% because you can, it's my understanding, and I'm not an expert, that you can only put forth a millage that equals the payment. But we all know how accurate MERS can be, and the fear is that if that amount is not what they have now, but exceeds the 3%, the 3 mills, it would then come out of the general fund. And so my only question to the commission is whether they feel that the 3 mills is sufficient, or whether they think they ought to make that a little bit higher, just as that cushion, since you will never exceed whatever the actual cost is.
It was the city commission's decision to put that 3% cap on it. We felt that that was enough to ask of the taxpayers, and that anything, if we ever got to the point where it exceeded that, we would go back to using general fund money for that difference.
And I think too, Mr. Mayor, the MERS calculation had it at about 2 mils was the anticipated levy. So this kind of built in has a 1 mil cushion. So that was sufficient, in my opinion, to provide a cushion up to 3 mils, gives us a mil to use. And then I agree with you, Mr. Mayor, that I did not want to place any more burden on the taxpayer with all of the sewer bonds that, you know, are potentially going to the water bill and the other taxes that we're looking at, that essentially the 3 mills will cover this for the foreseeable future. And if there is something at some point that becomes necessary from the general fund, then we're going to have to do that. That 5 mills was way too high, in my opinion.
Any other public comments? Any comments or questions from the commission?
I have one for the attorney, Mr. Mayor. Since you came here tonight, we'll figure we'll ask you a question.
My 30-second.
That's right, your 30-second commute. And you can go home and watch yourself on TV, right?
I guess so. And
That's
Elgin
right.
is a beautiful street. I live
That's
on
right.
Elgin.
There you go.
Okay, there we go.
So my question is,
I should buy that house.
yeah. We placed in the ballot language the 25-year time period, because at our previous meetings where we discussed this in more detail, and just so the public knows, this is not the first time we're discussing this. We've discussed this at special meetings and at the budget workshop in significant detail. You know, one of the questions was, you know, when does it end? So 25 years it ends. If for some reason it ends sooner, right, so we're able to get it fully funded and closed out sooner, this would end sooner. What happens if it goes beyond 25 years? Would we just re-present to the electors at that time a new proposal for a 5 or 10-year extension?
That's exactly right. Like any other levy that has a limited duration, if you want to levy it beyond that period of years, you go and you develop a new ballot proposal for an extension of time, or you know, you can think of it as just a new question or a new levy.
And now that the system is closed, because we were able to negotiate that with the labor unions, has MERS re-amortized it, and how long did they re-amortize the payment?
It's at 23 right now. It's going to go down year by year. And we are hoping that within 20 years it is paid off. We just put the 25 years in case MERS estimates to have it paid off by 20 years aren't accurate, and we need to go a little bit past that.
Great. So I'm totally comfortable at 25. Thanks.
Any others? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Expect to hear a lot more about this in the near future. Item number 2 is a matter of consideration to approve the City of Huntington Woods 2020 recreation pool and preschool rate increase.
So moved.
Second.
This is at approximately a 5% increase on the pool rates and a 12% increase on the preschool program rates.
The preschool rates are based on a survey of local preschools, so that we can be in line with those programs. And then the pool rate is basically a cost of living increase. As you know, we have an RFP out for a fee study to see what our fees need to be for these programs so that they cover the cost. But until then, we're going to put these through so that they're ready to go into effect next year.
Mr. Mayor?
Let me get some public comment first. And then- Any public comment? Okay, seeing none.
Initially, I thought that 12% increase on the preschool program was a huge jump. But given the history of this lack of increase to keep up with what other programs nearby are charging, I mean, I think a lot of thought and data went into this recommendation. And, you know, after looking at how comparable these rates are, it does make me feel a little better that there was a lot of logic to it, but 12% is a huge jump. I'm not totally sure that I'm comfortable with that. And then on the pool rates, the 5% increase makes a lot of sense to me. However, in this benchmarking that we are doing, I've always questioned the 6-visit punch. If you have gone to the pool and used this, it seems like that is the best deal when you look at the total season rate versus the 6 times that you might go. So I'd really ask the benchmarking process to take a look to see if that even makes sense to have that in there. It just seems like there's a lot of choices here. I'm fully supportive and comfortable with the 5% increase on the pool. That 12% increase, it's just such a big jump that I wish there was a glide path to get to 12%. And, you know, for the families that may have been using this a year before, it's a very steep increase. So I don't know if there are any thoughts of maybe 6% and then 6%, or breaking it down so that there's a transition period to get them there. Because, I mean, the latchkey fees had increased as well, but there was not such a steep increase right away.
Well, how this gets implemented, that'd be up to the commission. The recommendation is to 12% increase to bring us in line with other programs.
Mr. Mayor, I would just point out that last summer, when we met with the Budget Advisory Committee, this was one of the topics of conversation, and what they determined was that we were significantly under what other areas, contiguous areas, were charging for similar services, and that this is really a very modest attempt to bring us in line with that. I mean, we have an obligation to the citizens of the city to, you know, balance, you know, try to keep the city in proper financial straits here, and we're doing that, and this is obviously not a huge part of it, but it's part of it, and I don't think that the amounts that are being increased are dramatic. I think most of the consumers and users of these services will see them as very reasonable, given the high value of the services that are provided, so I'm fully supportive.
Mr. Mayor? I agree that, you know, on paper, 12% seems like a pretty significant increase, but when you look back over the past 4 years, we've only done about, you know, what works out to about a 1% increase each year, which isn't even keeping up with inflation. So unfortunately, we just can't continue with this near $1 million subsidy to Parks and Rec, including programming and offerings such as this. So we need to do something, and we need to do something fast. And so I agree with Commissioner Olsman that we need to move on this, and I support it as well. And then when the study comes out that more formally studies these rates, actual costs, benchmarking our neighbors, we'll have a better idea of where we need to be. But this is a step I think we don't really have much of a choice, and that we need to move forward with today.
Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Item number 3 is a matter of consideration to amend the 2019-2020 Capital Projects Fund for the Reynolds Park outdoor exercise equipment for an amount totaling $40,000.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to amend the 2019-2020 Capital Projects Fund budget to commit funds for Reynolds Park outdoor exercise equipment, drawing from fund balance and moving it to parks capital improvements.
Seconded.
Further explanation?
This is a project to bring outdoor exercise equipment to Reynolds Park. We have $25,000 budgeted in this budget. We have asked the men's club if they would consider donating to it, but even if our request is approved, there's a $40,000 gap. And if we're gonna get this project done this year, then we need to move $40,000 out of fund balance into the park improvement fund in addition to the $25,000 that's already set aside.
Any public comment? Seeing none, any comments or questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, I've talked to residents who are very, very excited about the prospect of this exercise equipment. I've met with a group several times to discuss this, and so I'm glad that the city is doing its part in allocating funding. Hopefully the men's club does come through. I do want to note that there's been some grant opportunities that I know our Parks and Rec Department is exploring. And obviously, if those grant opportunities pan out, then our city commitment would be reduced by the amount of those grants. But there's a number of agencies like Consumers Energy, Realtors, Community Fund for Southeast Michigan that I know are sort of on our radar and could ultimately make our commitment less than $65,000 in total if those pan out.
Yeah, I'm slightly confused when the equipment in that proposal costs $34,000 and it then mushrooms to $130,000. It's nice what they're doing. They're doing a lot of development for the whole park, but this originally started as a senior project, and I would have thought that with the work of public services, that there could have been a potential for them laying the platforms for the equipment to go into, and we could have done the whole thing for that project at $50,000, and then worried about the other additions to the park to upgrade the entire park at a separate point in time.
I'd be happy to look into that.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Mayor.
I've also met with a number of residents about this and fully support this project, by the way, because it encourages more healthy lifestyles, helps beautify our parks, and get people active and living and enjoying the neighborhood. And it also encourages community connections between our residents. And, you know, I've looked through this budget, and yes, it initially you think it's just a $34,000 funding for the equipment, but it's a whole lot more than that. This equipment is specialized. It's outdoor exercise equipment. So it requires a special type of installation. And it's outdoors, it's in a path. How are people going to get from point A to point B safely? If you're gonna be at a park, maybe you need a space to, rest if you're on this exercise equipment. So there is a lot of thought that has been put into it, and the group and our Parks and Rec department tried to look at it from a phase 1, phase 2 perspective to try to spread out the costs a little bit. But at the end of the day, the efficiencies that you gain of putting this together as a phase 1 project, it's just a lot more cost effective. So that's why I just wanted to explain, because of my involvement in understanding what was needed for the capital side of this project. It does require a lot, and I think there has been a lot of good work done in the planning and should be recognized in that. And hopefully we will get more grant opportunities to help us with the cost of this project. But overall, I think this is a great project for our community.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with Commissioner Elder. I think that if you build exercise equipment, but you don't provide a path for folks with disabilities or mobility issues to get to it, then my question is, what good does it do? So these paths that afford people opportunities to get to the equipment and providing adequate screening and adequate shade for people who are using it. And I think it also includes elements that provide an overall park enhancement, which makes this project more likely to be supported by the Men's Club and outside granting agencies, because it's not just exercise equipment, it's exercise equipment incorporated into an overall park improvement, which makes something like this more appealing to the entire community in general. So for that reason, I recognize that the price tag is higher, but you have to put it on concrete, and you have to anchor the shade sails, and you have to have paths to get there. And so all of those things cost money. And I am confident that the way the project looks now is more likely to get us a better response from granting agencies and the Men's Club than if it was just exercise equipment.
All right. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4 is a matter of entering into an agreement with D'Angelo Brothers, Inc. of Farmington, Michigan for lead service line replacements utilizing Oakland County cooperative bid in the amount of $150,000 from the Budget Stabilization Fund to the Water and Sewer Fund. This is to address the approximately 40 homes in Huntington Woods that we know of that have lead service lines. And a new state law that put that responsibility back to the local level. So it became our responsibility, so we are stepping up and taking care of the issue. Amy, do you want to add anything?
What I'd like to add is the $150,000 is our estimate of what we think it'll cost to do the replacement of those 40 lines. If it ends up costing a little bit more than that, then we'll come back to you for permission to move the money from the Budget Stabilization Fund to get that work done. This is our best guess right now.
Any public comment? None. Any comments or questions from the commission?
Do we need a motion first?
Did I miss that? Sorry about that. I didn't.
Seconded.
Thank you.
No problem.
Now for comments and questions.
Mr. Mayor, I think this is a top priority. It's great that we did not trigger the action level as set by the state of Michigan, but we did have 2 homes that had higher than the required minimum when we did the samples, and that alarmed me. And obviously, this is a new rule that has been passed down to us that we need to address. And I'm really excited that we were able to put together a plan to get this fixed immediately. The law now requires municipalities to replace these lines over 20 years, and that's not acceptable to me. If we have 2 homes, they need to be addressed. If we have 40 lines in the city, they need to be changed out, because, I mean, as a parent, as somebody who has parents who live here, who are seniors, and, younger kids as well, in my family, this is a top priority for us, and if we can address the 40 lead lines replacement right away, I'm in full support of this and really happy that we are being proactive.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask our DPW director, if you had any success in determining the 2 homes that exceeded the lead amount, is it from internal,
Yeah, it
like
was the first
fixtures that were leaching?
The exceedance was on the first draw and the second on the 1 home. So each home, which is kind of, should have just been the first. So what you get is, that's what's in the line in the home.
Right.
So even if you do change copper out and you have lead fixtures, you still could get a high first draw. That's what's kind of,
And that's my concern, Mr. Mayor, is that that's great, we're going to replace all these leads, but we need to let these folks know that, you know, the.
and they have been.
Okay, good.
We gave them all the information. And then on top of this, we're going to change out the stop box, the valve before the meter and the meter. So you're in the home, might as well update everything.
Yeah, and I think the homeowner should, you know, definitely be made aware of that to replace those fixtures. I mean, eventually the state legislature may make us pay for replacing people's internal plumbing fixtures too, just like they're doing this. Was never a city cost. This was always a homeowner cost until the legislature once again pushed costs down locally and saddled us with it with no funding mechanism from Lansing to pay for this. We're fortunate in that we only have 40 lines. A lot of places are a lot worse off than us.
Right, and in this estimate, we put 25% that if you go down the stop box, that's to the main, we'll replace that also. So I watched the Angelo brothers yesterday in Oak Park, and they did 4 in one day. It was pretty quick, which is nice, not too intrusive in the home, a little outside, maybe an 8x8 hole in the lawn. So it's a good system.
Commissioner
That's why they didn't
Rosado.
dig up their whole front lawn?
We could if.
Commissioner
Just
Rosa, I
curious.
think you brought up a really good point in that education piece. And Amy, I think it would be really great for you to post that open house that we had when you did that educational 9 minutes and 53 seconds of, you know, information about this new rule and how homeowners can be diligent about inspecting and getting the city involved. We still have to do an inventory. We have an inventory, but we have to physically do an inventory.
Well, so
for
far we
next
did
year.
55 people wanted a test, and all those 55 matched our cards. So there was no surprises on that. So I'm pretty confident what we have as an inventory now is correct. But as we go along, like I said, 55 and 30 or 20, so we're 75 right now that we've done. So everything looks good.
That's fantastic. So if we could keep that information live on the city website, that would be
PowerPoint's
great.
on the website, and a link to it will go out in the e-blast on Friday.
And moving forward after this, any new water main project, that'll just be part of the water main project. If we run across a galvanized or a lead, that's unknown, we'll change that out with the project. So, thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5 is a matter of considering the City of Huntington Woods enter into a contract with Dell Inc. for public safety mobile data computers in the amount of $17,270.22. We have a motion.
So move. Second.
Any other comments, Amy?
Dell to me,
Let's start with public comments. Seeing none, Commissioner Jenks.
Dell to me is not a very, very exciting company. Is it standardly used as?
Right, for Oakland County, yes.
Okay.
They service the Dell computer.
Any other comments, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6 is a purchase agreement for a truck. We have a motion?
So move.
Second.
I'd like to point out, this is replacing a truck we bought in 1991.
It owes us nothing.
Total cost of this vehicle, I thought someone would expand on it, would be $200,825. Is there any public comment? Commission comments, questions? All
Yeah.
those,
Yeah, what we've got is a truck with multiple bodies that's a all-season truck and functions to deal with all the different needs that we have throughout the year. It's like really buying a couple of trucks and with a solid frame of the body.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7 is another contract agreement with Camelot Tree and Shrub of Roseville, Michigan for tree trimming, tree removal, and stump grinding services. This is a change for us. We've been using Wanzi in the past, but we put this out for bid.
We have, and we have not been doing regular tree trimming, so we're going to get back on a regular schedule, and money's budgeted for that, so I wanted to make sure we had the best price for tree trimmers as well.
So moved.
Second.
Any public comment? Any comments from the commission? Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8 is to enter into a purchase agreement with Signature Ford of Owasso to purchase a 2020 Ford Transit cargo van, the amount of $24,826. We have a
Second.
Any public comment? Commission comments or questions? This is a recreation department van. It's used for many different uses.
Didn't last as long. This was a 2001.
Yes.
Don't buy Chevy next time. What do we have? We're doing a Ford?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 9 is appointments to the Communication Committee.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we appoint Lauren Willens, Shara Reed, and Eileen Cantor to the Communications Committee.
Actually, I should have added there that we have 2 3-year terms and 1 2-year term in order to get a good rotation going on the newly formed Communication Committee. So if you could add the term to your motion.
Okay. So 2 3-year terms?
Right.
2 3-year terms and 1 2-year term.
And the person that gets a 2-year term could reapply?
Yes.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes.
So this is in random order, because all of these people that we've met with were highly, highly qualified and brought a really good perspective. And I think their backgrounds will give us a lot of benefits to this committee. So in no particular order, it's just in the order that their names and their applications came in. I move that we appoint Lauren Willens and Shara Reed to the 2 3-year terms, and then Eileen Cantor to a 2-year term on the Communications Committee.
Second.
Any public comment? Commission comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 10. Good thing we had a consent agenda. Matter of consideration, the City of Huntington was approve a bid proposal for consulting on a Public Act 345 millage messaging and education initiative. So moved.
Second.
This is in order to help the city communicate with the residents so they understand what we're asking for in the 345 millage and how the money is going to be used to help our roads going forward into the future. So.
We're also going to do educational efforts on the last phase of the sewer project, where the bond would be paid for in the water rate. So it'll be a dual education campaign.
The bid covers that as well.
Yes.
Any public comments? Any comments from the commission?
Our newly formed Communication Committee will be very busy, Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor. Yeah, this will be one of the first things that they tackle with the consultants, so I think, at first I was hesitant to move forward with this. I felt that I wasn't, sure that it's necessary, but I think that some of these issues are fairly complex, and it's good as we look forward to Communications Committee and marketing and how we communicate with our residents. The timing is good to bring this consultant on, and I think this will be a good first project for them.
We also have a communications subcommittee on the long-range budget committee, and I think they'll be very insightful as well, since they've been along for the entire ride.
Great.
We have the perspective, the historical perspective, and then we have the best way to communicate a perspective.
I just have a question on the proposal
Sure.
for the Your People, for the first bullet point, because we're talking about which committees we'll be working with, right? It only refers to the budget committee. Or we make sure that
It'll
we
be
include
both,
the
yes.
communications committee.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 11 is approval of City of Huntington Woods holiday display policy. Amy, do you want to?
Sure. The city was approached by Rabbi Mann, who is a resident, and asked if we would consider placing a menorah on city property. So it's something that had not come before the commission before, so worked with Carol on developing a policy for your consideration. The policy outlines the first come, first serve, how big the display could be. The city doesn't favor one form of religion over the other. And then some other specifics in terms of city won't pay for it, the display must be donated. And then a hold harmless agreement.
Okay, this is at, well, we have a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion because I want to question Ms. Rosati. What are you looking like that?
Did I tell you how terrible I feel tonight?
Well,
You have a phone, could you have called me earlier?
Do we have a second?
I will second it because I feel like it's really important to discuss and learn from Carol.
so, is this okay?
We're gonna ask for public comment.
Yeah, you're doing public comment first?
I will. Is there any public comment?
I'd like to, yes, but I'd like to hear what the commission has to say first.
This is the opportunity for the public comment, so if you have comment, now is the
I
time.
think that's a little backwards, but I'll speak. Claire Gillette. I really think that the commission should not approve this. I think we have a very small lawn area. We really don't need to engage in any kind of display in front of our city hall, that it doesn't make sense. And I think, having spoken to a fair number of people, many of whom couldn't come for a variety of reasons, there's a big fundraiser for Study Club, which kind of took a lot of people away. The general consensus was that we don't need to have displays, that there is no particular reason why one would even have one in a specific month. You know, we could have it in the fall, or we could have it, but they always seem to be in December. I don't know why. So I, for one, and I think a lot of people would agree with me that I've spoken to, feel that the commission should not, we should not only not have a policy, we should not allow any kinds of displays in front of City Hall. So.
Thank you.
I'm Rabbi Dorit Edut. My English name is Doris, so I go by both Dorit and Doris. And I too feel that it's not appropriate to have a display of representing any one religion. I think if we had a peace pole or something like a flag that would say coexist with all the signs of the different religions, maybe something like that would be nice to have, but have that all year long. And as I understand the idea behind this, there is a Jewish principle to publicize the miracle of Hanukkah, but that's something that by our Jewish law is supposed to be done by us, by Jewish people, not expect anybody else to be doing that. So I am opposed to this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda Schwend, 8533 Hendry. And I agree, we shouldn't have any religious display on city grounds. I've always been really proud of our city that we coexist and respect each other. This just seems to open up a real can of worms to me.
Well, it may, that's why we, actually, Claire's point was she'd like to hear what we're gonna hear from our city attorney, because the first question I have is whether or not this is even okay, because it is a Pandora's box.
Exactly.
And,
Here's the thing, I mean, when Amy and I talked about my personal preference, I wouldn't do it, okay? I would not do it. Now, you can look around and there's a lot of communities that allow holiday displays, right? But if you open it up, you open it up. You don't get to pick and choose whose holiday display goes up there. You don't get to critique whether or not you believe it's some legitimate holiday display or, not permit it because it represents something that you find offensive. So there's potential for a lot of problems. I mean, just from a personal perspective, I wouldn't do it, but,
years ago.
it's been asked that the commission consider it, so, Amy and I worked on, okay, if we were to allow it, how could we try to control it as much as possible? So the policy itself is probably okay. It's what you really have to decide is whether or not you want to do this and open this door.
Well, I remember in the 80s, there was a lot of litigation involving municipalities
There still
putting up
is.
Christmas creches, and our friend Professor Sedler was involved in a lot of those cases and forcing the cities to take them down. I mean, as nice as it seems to put up a menorah or allow a Christmas tree, it is a Pandora's box of other issues. So, having made the motion that we consider it, I would strongly advise that the commission vote no. Well, you have to discuss it.
Yeah.
You can't discuss it unless we have a motion.
And again, it was something that, the resident came to the city manager and really wanted the commission to consider it. So this was the only way for the commission to consider it. So.
Mr. Mayor? Yeah, I've sort of a staunch separation of church and state. I'm a religious person, but I don't look to government for reinforcement of any particular religion on the steps of City Hall. I think that we do go down a slippery slope if we allow this. I think the rabbi's comments were spot on. That, religions have a responsibility of getting their message out, and I don't know that this is an avenue that we need to be involved with. We run the risk of what about these religions that aren't widely known, some that might be offensive to some people. I just think of something like a satanic cult or something that wants to put an offensive symbol on the lawn of City Hall. And now, because of this policy, because we can't discriminate against one religion over another, we're stuck with allowing it. So I think if we go down this road that we'll regret it, because, or we'll get into fights over, how long a display is going to stay up because another religion wants their display up in a similar week or similar month. And I just don't feel that
preaching to the choir. No,
yeah, I don't feel that right. I don't feel that this is appropriate for us to weigh in on, and so I'm not in support. And if ultimately when the discussion's done, Commissioner Olsman withdraws his motion, then I think that the issue's resolved.
I disagree with what the comments that have been made. Just for the record, I think that any time that we can help our residents celebrate their religion, that is a good thing for the community. for that reason, I'm in favor of it. Just as I was when we passed the Eruv some 20 years ago, I didn't see that as an issue that we should stand out on because it's a religious meeting. Commissioner.
Yeah, even having a menorah up there, it sounds very innocuous. We had 12 rabbis, according to the Detroit Jewish News, that live in Huntington Woods. The biggest fights, the biggest politics occur between the same religion. We say we'll store your item, and it's written right in there. So does that mean the rabbi that made the request that was awarded this year is the permanent spokesman for Judaism? When we go from mid-November to December, the major holiday in the Muslim world is Ramadan, which occurs usually in the summer. The break the fast, which is the most important point at the end, occurred this year, May 23rd or something like that. Next year it will be June or July. With the Hindu, Diwali is occurring right now. So are we going to skip them? With the Buddhists, they frequently celebrate along with the Chinese New Year, especially those that live in China. And that occurs normally in the spring. So to have any kind of dates as a restriction in there is not fair to other religions. It's great for Christianity and Judaism. What do we do with fringes in Christianity that don't accept some important segment and have another symbol that represents their opposition to a main point in Christianity? What do we do about the atheist that says, look, I have a position, I want to put a sign up here. My sign won't be bigger than 5 feet by 5 feet. Last year you had the Christians and the Jews. I represent a belief, and many people follow my belief. I love religion. I love different religions. But I don't think we put it on government property. We're going to have not only a Robert Seidler, but the ACLU on our back for doing something which we think is innocent and nice and respectful of religion. It points to Huntington Woods as being very narrow in its thinking and its focus, even though we feel very comfortable with our diversity and our sensitivity. I will be voting no.
And I seconded this motion because I felt like this conversation needed to be had because a resident came to us. I think in the spirit of trying to be a diverse and inclusive community, while this may initially seem like we're trying to include all of these different religions with this, the way that this is written, it's actually could, as many of as Commissioner Rozelle and Jangson, Olsman have said, it could actually do the opposite of being exclusive. So, initially, in thinking about this, during the holiday seasons, it is very nice to have festive, decorations at your homes, but that separation of church and state, I think that along with us making sure that we are being an inclusive community, I would not support it.
It was such a small area that obviously somebody's going to be excluded. They're just going to.
Right.
Well-intentioned, bad idea.
Yeah.
That's what it really is. It's just, it's got, it seems innocuous and it seems good-hearted. It's just that there's too much room for, there are too many problems that can flow from it. It's not a debate we need to have.
What time do the menorah lights go out? Who supplies the electricity? If there's a.
We're done. Just call the question, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
No.
I don't know if you're allowed to vote against your own motion. by
Yes, you
Robert's
are,
rules of
actually.
order, are you?
Well, stepped right out there.
He
didn't
was
I?
educated.
Yes, he was. All right, item number 12 is a matter of consideration to set a public hearing on December 3rd for the 2020 CDBG program year.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any public comment? Commission comments, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 13 is setting the 2020 City Commission meeting schedule.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we adopt the provided 2020 City Commission meeting schedule.
Seconded.
Thank you. Any public comment? Comments or questions from the commission? Commissioner Jenks?
Can I recommend that we move the April 14th meeting to the 23rd? The rationale for that being that we have taxes due the next day.
I will not be available on April 23rd.
And April, whatever, the 21st. Oh, I'm sorry. The 21st, not the 23rd.
Not available on the 21st either.
What about the 28th?
We have a meeting with the budget study session.
And why can't people file their taxes? And you had,
All right.
yeah, because you're gonna run into other.
Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Need a roll call vote for the matter of recessing into closed session to discuss letter subject to attorney-client privilege. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Mayor Pro Tem Rozell?
Aye.
Commissioner Elder?
Aye.
Commissioner Olsman?
Yes.
Commissioner Jenks?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We will not be reconvening following the closed session. City Manager's report.
Yeah, I have a couple of events coming up at the Recreation Center. There's still space available for Santa's Winter Wonderland on December 7th. You can register online or at the Recreation Department. Also, there is going to be a holiday lunch at Farina's for residents that are 60 and older on December 9th. You do need to pre-register for that. I go every year if you're available. It's heartwarming and a nice event. Both, with Thanksgiving being next week, of course, we're closed on Thursday and Friday, but then the Recreation Center and the library are also going to be closed on Saturday and Sunday that weekend. So that's it from Recreation. I did want to congratulate Heidi, our new clerk, on her first election. And everything went really well, so I know she's geared up to do 3 next year. And then I wanted to let you know that traditionally we do the interviews for boards and commissions in December and appoint them, but our December meeting is December 3rd, and with Thanksgiving being next weekend, I don't think we're gonna be able to get people here on the 3rd for those interviews. I will be sending out a doodle poll to set a special meeting in December just to do the interviews. And then, given the time of year, we will do the appointments in January, because the meeting is right away in January. None of the boards and committees will have met by the time of our first meeting. So we'll be looking for that poll for another special meeting, and then the appointments will be in January. That's all I have.
Are there any questions of the city manager?
First meeting without commissioner comments, and I love it, Mr. Mayor.
Was that a comment?
That was a comment.
You're out of order, then. Do I have a motion to adjourn the regular city commission meeting?
Mr. Mayor, fine, I'll second it. then.
No, we shouldn't.
Actually, we're going to closed session, then you'll
Oh.
adjourn after the closed session, the regular meeting.
Okay. With that, the regular city commission meeting is temporarily
Going into closed session.
closed and moving into closed session. We do need to reconvene.